to episode 3 of the Twenties Trenches. So, when I originally started this channel, I was pretty keen to have like an episode a week. So, I've already let that slip because I didn't do last week's episode. But it is what it is. I'm finding my feet. I'm also still trying to figure out what content I'm sharing on here, what I feel like talking about, all of the rest of it. So, this episode is all about health and wellness and looking after yourself as self-employed and sort of what happens when you don't, and a little bit of my own experience. So I'm self-employed and I also have a startup that I'm trying to get off the ground. And so I work for myself and I don't have any fixed income. I have regular income, 100%, but it's not fixed, and I'm obviously not supported by an employer. Now, this has kind of been my situation for a while, so I'm pretty used to it. But it is obviously, it's stressful. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're self-employed, you know that if you don't work, you don't get paid. So naturally, any sort of like smart, forward thinking person is going to always try and have a nice, big, juicy savings cushion to fall back on. Now, in the 4 years that I have been self-employed, the only time I've ever not been able to work has been if I'm out of the country, if I'm traveling, if I've gone on holiday. And then in terms of illness, I think the longest I've ever had to take off from work was 2 days, because I'm quite on it with that. So if I start feeling sort of like run down or something, I'll try and cancel like some evening sessions and some morning sessions so I can get like a long burst of rest. But it never really like flows on too long. And also I tend to work through a lot of sort of minor illnesses as well. So I've never really been in the position where I'm restrained from working. I did have COVID in early 2021, but at that point a lot of the world was still virtual, so quite a few of my clients were happy to see me virtually, and I also wasn't very ill, so it wasn't a big deal. Now, towards the end of 2024, I actually contracted chickenpox. So I hadn't got it as a child. I also hadn't been vaccinated. And so I went to work one Monday, and it was a Monday after my birthday. So I just thought I was like dehydrated, struggling with a hangover. But I pretty much had a horrific fever, like really bad fever. Couldn't really understand why. Had some paracetamol, got through my shift. Normally on Monday I'm at a studio doing classes and one-to-ones. Came home, hot shower, paracetamol, straight to bed. I'm like, I just need a good night's sleep. Sleep it off, shake it off. Barely slept the whole night. Massive headache. Like I remember I was just lying in bed, like squeezing my head. And at this point, I kind of figured that I probably had like COVID or some form of bad flu. So I cancelled my morning slot of clients. And I was still going to go to work in the afternoon because I figured, okay, I'm going to like take my paracetamol, get some sleep. I'll do a COVID test before I go in. But if it's just like a big flu, then I'm fine. I woke up in the morning and I had this like rash starting on my tummy. Within hours, it had spread all over my face, and it was quite evidently chickenpox. Fast forward the most intense 2 weeks of my life. I've actually added a few reels to the shorts that you can go and look at if you want to see some gnarly scenes from adult chickenpox, like hectic. So not only could I obviously not go anywhere, I couldn't leave the house. I didn't leave the house in 10 days. Okay, 10 days just not even stepping outside. And I was too sick to even work virtually, even though none of my business is really virtual right now. I was also too sick to even like do any work on my online platform, as in like background work. I was knocked out for like 17 hours a day. So obviously this was largely disruptive to my income and to my salary. And I then started getting better and I returned to work, and I was back at work for about 5 days, and I then got Bell's palsy. So the right side of my face was paralyzed, and when you get something like that, so Bell's palsy and Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, they don't really have a timeline for it. So what it is inflammation of the seventh cranial nerve, and it paralyzes a side of your face. In some cases, it can even go down into the arm and shoulder. And it meant that I couldn't blink this eye, I couldn't use this nostril, my mouth didn't move. I literally only had one side of my face working. And again, I've popped the series up in my shorts. I documented the whole thing on my Instagram because it was the only way for me to cope with it, was to actually just put it out there. And yeah, my work was then restricted quite a bit because it was really hard to talk. I mean, I did tough it up, and although it was quite like, it took a lot for me to stand in front of a group of people and speak with half a face and whatever, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of like confidence, self-confidence sort of issues, working that out, that kind of thing. But I did work. It's not like I didn't work. I did work a little bit, not much though. And then luckily I had like a big holiday coming up where I got to go back to my parents and just take some downtime to recover. Because the other thing is, you know, they don't give you a timeline, but they want you to rest as much as possible. So you can imagine I'm now sitting at like 4 weeks of no work, and that's massive. And it's also just before December, where I have scheduled 3 weeks of no work. So, you know, it's not looking good. Now, thankfully, I actually had income insurance. So if you are self-employed, get income insurance, okay? Take it out. I got a really minimum premium. I think I pay like 25 quid a month. And thankfully, I've been paying it since I started, so 4 years ago. And they were really good at paying me out, not my whole salary at all, but definitely a chunk to help. So if you are self-employed, please get your income insurance. I know how we all feel about insurance. Like, it's a massive eye roll, and sometimes you just think I should be saving money anyway, but I definitely have been paid out more than I've given them. So it's definitely worked in my favor. So that is what I'd say, number one. Now, coming back to work in the new year, as you can see, my face is much better. I still don't think that it moves. I mean, even there, if I crinkle my nose, you can see like the side of my nose doesn't crinkle quite as much. And I don't think, you know, I don't get to the dimples anymore. And there's definitely still a level of neural sensation that I'm experiencing. And it gets worse if I'm tired, if I've had a long day. And I mean, that's the thing, is they just say the recovery is quite long. But of course, I am way better. So I'm very, very thankful for that. What this kind of left me with, though, is a little bit of like PTSD about my health. And this is something that I never really thought I'd experience, because I've just always been the kind of person who, like, you work first, you think about it later. I'm not thinking about, I work 7 days a week, I'm working early and late. I'm not thinking about that kind of balance at all. I'm like, it's work, I'm getting paid per hour. If I can, I will. I'm going to work, I'm going to hustle. Like, I'm resilient. And I've been like that. I mean, I've been like that my whole life, but in my sort of like training and professional career, I've been like that for the last 10 years. And I grew up in a family where people worked hard. Everyone around me worked hard, and they put in the hours and they put in the graft, and that was that. And you barely took off time when you were sick. You had to be really sick or broken to take off time. And I'm not saying like that's not a flex at all. I mean, I'm very thankful for the work ethic that has been installed in me. But that also comes with the consequence of not really looking after yourself well enough. So coming back into the new year, a lot of my sort of like planning and strategy for the year had a lot to do with making sure I have enough time to sleep and enough rest time. And it's honestly been a very uncomfortable thing for me to set up. I'm very uncomfortable being like, no, I will not see you on a Thursday afternoon because Thursday is only a half day. It goes against my grain. It makes me feel like I'm weak, like I'm not doing enough, like I'm not dedicated enough. It makes me feel like that. However, on the flip side, I am extremely anxious about my health now. So earlier this week, I got a bit of a fever. It felt like a fever. And I literally just spiraled into a total panic attack because I was like, I'm going to wake up ill in the morning. I'm not going to be able to go to my job. I'm not going to be able to do this. And I was like anxious. I couldn't sleep. I'm like, if I don't sleep, I'm going to be unhealthy. I'm going to get sick. There's a lot. And I hadn't quite realized that, because I think when I was in it, the chickenpox into the Bell's palsy, I was just coping. So it's that typical thing of like post that sort of like traumatic period, I'm now feeling, oh my gosh, And I think me feeling so anxious about it has given me permission to set the boundaries, because before I wouldn't. And I'm still surrounded by people who think boundaries are bullshit. And I agree with them. But I have to get to the point where I'm making the best decision for me, because losing 5% of my work every week, but making sure that I can consistently do 95% is a lot more productive than pushing to 100% for a certain amount of time and then being taken out of the game for a couple months. So your health is no joke. And it's so funny because I work in wellness, right? And I would always recommend enough sleep, enough balance, enough time spent on your own physical health to all of my clients. But I don't know. I don't know if it's, I do know. I think it's a combination of conditioning. I'm conditioned to work really hard. I think it's also a self-expectation, definitely. None of my loved ones would necessarily be like, please hurt your health to work. However, I have an expectation of myself. And it's definitely a bit of a societal construct as well. And I think we're living in an age where people are taking health and work-life balance a lot more seriously. So that pendulum has swung. But when I look at it all the way over here, where people are like just barely wanting to do their jobs but still have a secure salary, I'm a little bit like, I think that's ridiculous. But there is a middle ground. And if you are someone who is self-employed and driving yourself forward constantly, you need to acknowledge that middle ground, because if you don't listen to your body, it's going to start screaming. And that is just the truth. And maybe not now, but it will catch up with you. I have been telling myself for years, more balance in the future, I'll figure that out. I'll do this when this. And eventually my body just said no. And I'll tell you, I didn't feel particularly burnt out when this happened. I actually felt okay. I didn't think I was in the busiest time ever. I didn't think that I was under any more strain than usual. Yes, there probably were a few factors, like the fact that I was still displaced home-wise, and we had just lost the house, the first house that we put an offer in. And yeah, okay, cool. But those are all usual stresses that you're going to come across. So bottom line is, learn from my mistakes and take care of yourself. And I am definitely going to chat a little bit more in the future about self-care in terms of being self-employed, because it's something that I'm learning. It's a journey that I'm on. And of course, that's why I'm here, is to share that. As I said, check out the shorts for a little bit more on my Bell's palsy journey. And I'm really thankful to have, I would say, close to 90% of the movement back in my face. The little bits that are missing, I know that you don't notice it until you do. Obviously, it's my face, I'm hyper aware of it, but I'm still so thankful to be more recovered. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 3 of the 20s Trenches, where I'm just sharing my journey of being in the trenches of my 20s. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also check me out on TikTok as well as Instagram.